this is John for Pioneer Nexus MTG, coming at you with another quick video, this one on an announcement that was made earlier this week, and that being the introduction of Explorer to MTG Arena, which is kind of their bridge to eventually get the Pioneer format on the Arena client. Explorer will be a constructed, non-rotating, true-to-tabletop format using all Pioneer legal cards available on Arena. Head over to our Format Hub for more information on Arena. It will feature the same constructive queues and events available for Standard. Basically, for those of you who are more familiar with Magic Online or Tabletop, Arena has a best-of-1 format and a best-of-3 format for each thing, which is currently Standard, Historic, and Alchemy. Alchemy is basically a Standard plus some small sets, and then Historic is kind of this amalgamation of digital cards and a bunch of random cards that they picked throughout Magic's history, in addition to cards that would be normally Pioneer legal. So a lot of people thought Historic was going to be this kind of the pseudo Pioneer of Arena, and they end up taking it in a different direction. So both formats kind of have their own thing to do for the moment. It will begin with the same ban list as Pioneer, Explore that is, but you'll need to be managed it more separately, which means you're likely to see things like maybe Winota and stuff. If it proves to be too powerful for the smaller card pool, it'll end up getting banned. It'll be available for deck building currently on April 21st, but will not be available for play until April 28th. So it'll be interesting to see what the effects of that on the thing. Basically, with Streets of New Capenna, our new true will be Explorer. For those who have played the what was written Magic events, you'll already be familiar with it. Once again, basically this is all the cards that they've already printed on Arena that are legal in Pioneer. Further down in it, basically they say that eventually Pioneer will be coming to the format over the next several years, including starting this summer with historic anthologies. But the main thing that they're talking about is, much like Magic Online, if you've played at Vintage or Legacy, not every single card in those formats is available on Magic Online, just the cards that are mostly considered format staples or see play in the format. So what they're going to be doing with Magic Arena is very similar. They're going to be slowly introducing all of the cards that are not currently available that see play in the Pioneer format. So eventually, probably within the next I would say year or two, they'll probably get most of the cards out there. And eventually Explorer will cease to exist and it will just transition into being Pioneer. But basically their goal is to get all the Pioneer cards that matter, so when we eventually embrace the Pioneer name on MTG Arena, expect to be a point where decks you want to play will be available. Cards will be added gradually starting later this summer with Historic Anthology 6. All of the cards that matter means we'll be working towards all the cards that are regularly played in Pioneer, much the same way as Vintage Online. It doesn't contain every 2/2 for 2 ever printed. Now on the ban list, we plan to adhere to Pioneer's ban list, but there will be times where cards become problematic in Explorer because of the differences in card pools. If that happens, we will not rebalance or suspend cards, we will ban it. So what they're talking about is in the Alchemy and Historic formats where they have this digital-only ability to change cards, or they have the ability to suspend cards like they've been doing Historic. Instead, they're just going to outright ban it until such time. And then they've also mentioned that when they do this, they will not be refunding wild cards. So if you're using wild cards on this, do not expect them to get reimbursed for those, but instead you will be able to play it when Pioneer is available down the line, as long as the card is available in as long as the card is still available in the Pioneer format when the full Pioneer format comes to being. So what does this mean long term for the Pioneer format? It means that in some ways Pioneer may eventually eclipse a format like Modern as the primary eternal format for paper Magic. I do think that transition's already starting now. So for those of you that are familiar, Standard is the primary paper format for people who are new to Magic and for larger competitive scenes overall. With the introduction of Arena, they introduced Historic and eventually Alchemy, which are digital-only cards. But if you look at the paper formats, or cards that you can actually play in paper, you had Standard, Modern, Legacy, Vintage. Modern being everything from 8th edition on, other than some cards on the ban list. Legacy was all cards except for certain cards that were restricted in Vintage. And Vintage was basically every card ever in Magic, with the exception of some ban and restricted cards. Restricted being in the 60-card deck, you can only play one, which makes it one of the more unique things about Magic in that regard. But they put Pioneer, which is kind of in between what standard and modern are. Modern has largely started to become like Legacy used to be in regards to the decks are getting more expensive. While they still reprint some cards in those formats and they print new cards, oftentimes it can be really hard to bridge the gap from being a modern player or from a standard player into a modern player as you're slowly getting into Magic. If you become a more competitive minded player, or even if you're playing at your local FNMs, and Pioneer was kind of introduced as the kind of in-between thing where you could play some of your old standard cards. Obviously, the pandemic and a lot of other things have kind of disrupted the flow of what Wizards was trying to do. And there was a time when Pioneer was first introduced that it was arguably the most popular format in Magic, as Modern itself was in a pretty bad time with how they managed the ban list and stuff. There were only a few decks that were playable, and Pioneer had its own little thing going on. Then a bunch of people found a bunch of combos that kind of took over the format, whether it was Inverter of Truth combo, whether it was Underworld Breach combo, etc. So a lot of different decks kind of drove people away from the format, and as Modern improved, again, a lot of people switched back to focus to Modern, as Modern had a more tangible presence in terms of what was going on. And then obviously they doing away with the original organized play thing before they brought back a similar system to the old system. There really was no push to play the Pioneer format. And then they had also announced at some point that there was no immediate plans to bring Pioneer to Arena, even though when they had introduced Historic, they had said that Pioneer would be coming to Arena eventually. Well, now a lot of people have been pushing for Pioneer to be coming to the Arena format, and then they've also been pushing Pioneer now as part of one of the 3 formats that you'll be seeing on the Pro Tours. So, between a bring back of the more traditional Magic Online organized play, or Magic organized play, and the fact that people really want true to paper formats, in addition to the digital only formats that Wizards themselves is trying to push, I think it's a good time to introduce this. And obviously we might do a little bit of gameplay for Explorer on the channel, but we'll still primarily stick to Pioneer, as that's what this channel is about. But overall, I am very interested to see where they go with this. And I do think with Arena being a more popular client than Magic Online, eventually you will see Pioneer eclipse Modern as played formats, at least in the digital space. In paper, it may take a little while, but once again, Pioneer is a little bit cheaper of a format to get into, so I think that will also help Pioneer eventually outplace Modern, as long as the formats are kind of comparable in what they're doing. If one format gets particularly bad, I can see the other one rising in popularity for the time, but that's up to Wizards to kind of manage their formats a little bit better. So, what do you think of the announcement of Explore coming to Magic Arena? I know a lot of the entrenched Magic player base, the boomers, tend to prefer the Magic Online client over the Arena client. I kind of enjoy them both. They both do slightly different things. Arena is a little bit more fluid as a client to play, I think. Obviously, it's a little bit more difficult to do like the bluffing and stuff on Arena, but I like the overall feel of the Arena client. But Magic Online obviously has much more options to play, so I'd still dabble in a little bit of both. But let me know what you think of this announcement, and if you'd like to see any Explorer content on the channel. This has been John for Oblivions and Gaming. Not for Oblivions and Gaming, for Pioneer Nexus MTG. Too many YouTube channels. Hey everybody, this is John for Oblivion's End Gaming, coming at you with a little bit more details about the new expansion for World of Warcraft Dragonflight. In the in-depth article that they wrote on the World of Warcraft website, basically they're saying once the broodlands of the Dragonflight, the Dragon Isles were once the center of the Dragon's Kingdom when they were young, and the mortal races were just starting to form their kingdoms. Then the Legion invaded, and the War of the Ancients and the Great Sundering broke the world, taking a lot of the magic of the world with it. Dragons were forced to leave their homeland behind. They didn't leave without the Watchers standing behind, leading guard. It's kind of what we saw in the cinematic. The dragons leaving the Isle as that green flash in the background with the Wall of Eternity being blown up. And then the time has come for the sky to light up with the colors of the aspects once again, for Alexstrasza and the others to come home, but the land has changed in all these thousands of years. Dragons we know of today are quite different from the early ones of Azeroth. These were the much more savage we know as the proto-dragons. The biggest which of those was Galakrond, which the aspects had to combine to beat. Who may end up being the big bad of the series, we'll have to wait and see. So that's the one thing they have not revealed as to who the primary antagonist of this expansion is. The more recent memory, the dragons are now empowered with the aspects the green Dragonflight Red, blue Dragonflight Bronze, and black, each with unique powers and abilities to protect the world in different ways. These are the pillars of draconic power that were appointed to defend Azeroth from the threats within and without. Power was used for good in the case of most aspects, but also for nefarious reasons in the case of Blast. Black Dragonflight lived by Notharian, better known as Deathwing. As an opportunity to reclaim their legacy, return once more to the powers of Azeroth. Lands have not been peacefully awaiting their turn. Old enemies have awoken as well, and will be confronted and overcome if the flights are to make their new home once again. One of these old foes that we'll have to overcome is the elemental half-giants, the Jardin. They aren't the only residents of the Dragon Isles, however, and there are many occupants you get to know in your explorations. You'll encounter the beloved Teskar, which are from Northrend, as well as centaurs, which predate those we know in Kalimdor. We also get to reconnect with Wrathion, which was the uncorrupted Black Dragonflight member that we've run into in Mists of Pandaria, Cataclysm, and I believe Battle for Azeroth as well. And a new playable race, which will be the Drakthir, which we've already mentioned. Exploration is a key theme for this expansion, and players will be able to adventure in the ancient land and explore the landscapes and its architectural history. We've created huge zones with many players to delve into the many treasures and secrets tucked away. The Heroes of Azeroth will work along the Reliquary and Explorers League to help the Dragonflights help them find their legacy, as they have long helped the residents of Azeroth as a true Azerothian adventure waiting to be had and explored. So basically, we're going back to the Dragon Isles with the aspects, keeping in mind that there's only 2 currently surviving aspects, and that being Alexstrasza, the Red Dragonflight member or leader, and the Bronze, which I believe is Nordamo. But we've actually, ironically, killed him in the future in one of the 3 ones at the end of Wrath, where we did, I believe it was the Sands of Time, or the last of the, I think it was the last of the, I'm trying to remember which one we killed him in. It was one of the Caverns of Time dungeons that we actually killed a future version of him as the leader of the Infinite Dragonflight, which is a opposing Dragonflight that messes with time. The Bronze Dragonflight has typically dealt with time, Red has dealt with life, Black has dealt with earth, Blue has dealt with magic, and Green has dealt with primarily the Emerald Dream and the Forest Lands. So those are kind of the flights, what their main powers have been. That said, let's delve into the different zones that we will be running into in Dragonflight. First zone they talk about is the Waking Shores. The Waking Shores is a first of 4 level up zones players will encounter. It's a wild and untamed land to be reawakened. The proto-dragons soar the skies. Elementals are rising up as the magic of the land does, and the land is rife with opportunities. The Horde and the Alliance have engaged in an expedition with the Explorers League and the Reliquary as they join with you to find more. Here, you'll learn more about the Red Dragonflight, led by Queen Alexstrasza, the Lifebinder. They have a mandate to nurture all life and its duty to take seriously, but it's not without its challenges, especially when it finds a way to preserve the lives of their enemies, the Jardin, which still preventing those same enemies from adversely affecting the ecology of the land. These half-giants wield the power of magma while the Dragon Isles slumber, and so did they, but like the land, they have reawakened and primed to create. It is also the ancestral home of the Black Dragonflight, which has fallen on tough times since Deathwing's descent. Wrathion is joining Azeroth's heroes. He comes to terms with the state of his Dragonflight, which is in a diminished state. Basically, Deathwing went nuts, took most of the Dragonflight with him, and now Wrathion is trying to pick up the scraps with maybe a few whelps left to pick up the pieces with. So, moving on to the next area. Next area is the Haran Plains. After the Waking Shores, players will venture in the wild open expanses of the Haran Plains, the area named for the wild god of the wind, Anharana, who appeared as the large spear of an eagle, helped guide centaurs of the Dragon Isles many years ago before. She blessed them and took their caravan across the Isles, showing them the plains that they could make their new home. Centaur encountered the Green Dragonflight and would fight for dominance, only to find that neither they nor the Green Dragonflight was stronger than the other, as they made peace with each other. The Green Dragonflight made their homes in the groves, while the Centaur took over the plains. But after thousands of years, the Centaur have advanced in their culture. Players will have the opportunity to explore and learn about them. Centaur originated as one strong clan led by the mighty Maruk and Tira, who found their new life on the Haran Plains all those years ago, so you'll need to learn their roles and traditions if you're to earn their trust. With such a large expanse to see, engineers also have the opportunity to allow players to see even further, which will enjoy the beauty of this rich landscape. So, area number 2, the green Dragonflight. Area number 1 was for the red and black Dragonflight. Let's see what the Azure Span has to offer. Azure Span. Our third zone takes us to the Azure Span, one of the biggest zones created to date in World of Warcraft. Offers the largest visual elevation change of zones player will explore through. It was inspired by one of our favorite zones in Wrath of the Lich King, Grizzly Hills, along with California Bay with coastal fogs and redwoods, though there are more than just redwoods to be found in the zone. As players progress through the zone, they'll eventually come in wide open tundra alight with golds and reds, till you reach the next level of elevation where you get to see snow. The majority of the zone is covered in snow and ice, with giant frozen waterfalls, ice rivers, and more. It's here you'll encounter the Gnolls, who have made the forests of the Azure Span their home beyond the wide open tundra of the Tuskarr, which we've met before, as I said earlier, in the Wrath of the Lich King, and here you have expanded upon their beloved group with male, female, and adorable Tuskarr children. In the Tuskarr, alongside the blue Dragonflight, we'll also follow the story of Kalecgos as he ventures into Sindragos' archives. It's a giant zone. There's a lot of surprises that before you move into the fourth zone, Thalodarsis. So Sindragosa was the mate of Malygos. She ended up dying on the fight with Deathwing, and when Deathwing turned on all the aspects, and she tried to make it home to Dragonblight and didn't quite make it, so she ended up getting revived by the Lich King later on. We ended up confronting her at the end of Wrath. And then Malygos obviously went nuts from everything that happened with Deathwing, tried to prevent anybody from using magic, and we ended up having to deal with him in, what was the name? The Nexus? What was the name of the actual raid, though? It was on Ellingfjord. So we ended up having to deal with both. That was the first dragon aspect that actually died in the game. We ended up having to kill him himself because he went nuts. And then obviously his mate died, and we ended up having to fight him as one of the final bosses before actually fighting a Lich King in the end of Wrath. So Kalecgos was the one that ended up replacing Malygos as the new leader of the Dragonflight, and he was in the cinematic at the end of Cataclysm where the dragons lost their immortality and a good portion of their powers. And the final zone is Thalodarsis. I cannot pronounce that, so let's see what that has to offer. After spending time seeing many dragon building ruins in the previous 3 zones, Thalodarsis offers something more pristine, with beautifully intact buildings in the seat of power for all 5 Dragonflights and Home of the Dragons, vertical lofty mountains and great cave systems, with maybe a small dragon horde or 2 to be found along the way. There's also the home. Here the Bronze Dragonflight make their own area carved out. Their power over time lends itself to a variety of gameplay options and adventures for players to undertake. Players will also reach the main city hub of the expansion here, Val Dark Rock. Val Draken. The city is the culmination of all the dragon's efforts and provides several vignettes to enjoy with the Blue Dragonflight's public library to the Red Dragonflight's own separate gardens. The city will serve as a convenient hub of activity and include access to the auction house for those looking to gain action to purchase a variety of items. You will also find the Tyrhold is here, built by the Titan Keeper Tyr 10,000 years ago. Titan Marvel houses great aqueducts that reach across the valley. It was Tyr who helped the Aspects fight Galakron, which was the huge proto-dragon that I mentioned, and they came in to sell the Dragon Isles. It was he who built this facility. Even though Tyr is long gone, the dragons still hold him in reverence. The Titan Keepers have continued to maintain her Tyrhold, while the Dragonflight gone on to take on an incredible amount of history as the defenders of Azeroth. Flights have nearly been wiped out, there have been invasions and betrayals, and even some aspects have died, all but 2 of them. These are the things that left marks on society, but now the Dragonflights have come back together. A story that will be played out through the Dragon Isles with many mysteries and discoveries to come. Basically, they're saying that there's a whole lot of backstabbing and a whole lot of politics going on, and they're going to have to learn to coexist in an area where they're not going to be the only power vying for power. The Aspects lost most of their power in the final clash with Deathwing, when we killed Deathwing at the end of Cataclysm, and we've had a few appearances. Ysera tried to intervene during the Legion thing and ended up killing by what was his name? the Nightmare Lord. I can't remember the name of him on the top of his head. But Ysera ended up dying. We ended up helping her out during Shadowlands, get her consciousness back, although she's not alive. So once again, there's only two aspect leaders, original aspect leaders left alive, being the Red Dragonflight and the Bronze Dragonflight, and the other three are currently dead. So it'd be interesting to see how they play out the balance. Clearly, Alexstrasza is definitely the most powerful remaining of the Dragonflight aspects. But that's kind of an overview of a little bit more in depth of what they've talked about. Future videos will go over the new class, the Drathir Invoker, talk about the changes to the talent trees, talk about the changes to the crafting in some different videos, but I did want to get this video together, kind of talk a little bit about the lore that they've explained so far, and talking about some of the past of dragons in World of Warcraft. So, this has been John, or Cell, for Oblivions and Gaming.